Oh, hi! Welcome to the Weekly Spinner Rack. I am your host, Chris. Let's see here. All right, we've got a bunch of people in the chat already. That's nice to see. Let's go ahead and say hello to some people, because it is a big show, but I want to greet some of the people that were here right at the beginning. I'm seeing Brian Reagan, Big Gay Dave. Hello also to Jim Mahfood. Hello, Andrew Jefferson, Allison McGlone, Dave Q, TJ Rip, Daryl Grant, Rostown, Uros Velokovic. I hope I did that right. Look at that. Caleb Barlow, Evan McDonald, A-Man. Lots of new names, lots of familiar names. This is great. Tell you what, you guys get the double salute. Boom, boom. That's for you. This is going to be a good one, folks. I'll lay out what we're going to do today. We are going to get into some quick comic book reviews from the past week, just basically my recommendations or non-recommendations. Then we're going to move into, I'll draw something, really inking something. And while I do that, I'm going to go over the news of the week. And there's a lot of big pieces of news this week. That always makes my job here easier. Meanwhile, I'll be interacting with all of you, so that's going to be fun. And I've got some other stuff that I'll like sort of mix in while I'm drawing, because I've seen some like other sort of movies and stuff. I've got some personal news of stuff that I'm working on. Pretty excited to share some of that just a little bit. Can I show my belly hole piercing? Don't got one of those, but I do have this shirt that shows that I am the volleyball champion for Top Gun. I just needed a shirt and I got this. Oh, somebody from Scotland, Edinburgh. Lovely. Well, hello from the United States. Lovely to have you here. Just a quick thing I'll put at the top of the show. I've got a P.O. box now. So, if you want to send anything for me to just take a look at, like if you've made your own comic or something like that, or a comic you think I should review, can't promise anything. So if you have any doubts, don't feel obligated to send anything. But if you'd like to, I now have an address where you can send that. And I've got a video I will upload this week where I sort of do an unboxing. I got some really cool stuff, some comics, some lovely letters, t-shirt, some really interesting stuff. So thank you. That's really exciting. Can't wait to share that with everybody. So anyway, that's Comic Tropes, P.O. Box 5834, Kent, Washington 98064. And with all that out of the way, why don't we get into some comic book reviews? That seems like a good place to start, if you ask me, which you didn't. Oh boy, my hair looks terrible today. You know, I'm doing a show. I really should think about presentation a little bit more. What is it doing here? What is that doing? Oh my god, I'm gonna have to hire a stylist. I don't know. If you haven't had a chance, I have another channel called Comic Tropes, where I do sort of edited analysis videos about comic book history and techniques. Steve Sorensen saying, do a barrel roll. That's a good trick. It's wizard. My latest episode was about John Romita Jr. He's an artist that personally I really like. I'm not going to say that everything he does is flawless. I'm not. He is very upfront about the fact that to him, getting stuff done on a deadline is very important. But I kind of admire that too. When he has his time and he has his, can put in extra effort, my God, I really think it's beautiful. But even if, some of the things that people complain about, maybe just how he does a face or that he's too blocky, I just feel like he has a really clean storytelling style. So anyway, that's what I talked about in the latest episode. I get into a little bit more detail than that. But, he is the artist on the current Amazing Spider-Man run. This has got to be his, let me think. 1, 2, 3. This is at least his 4th run on Spider-Man, but he may have done more. Anyway, it's fun. This is a fun issue. It was interesting to get to read this so recently, just because his first couple issues of Amazing Spider-Man, John Romita Jr. also had Spider-Man fight the Vulture, so it was really interesting to show some images of how far an artist can go over, like 40 years in terms of adjusting their style and stuff like that. How do I feel about John Romita Jr.'s DC work from a few years ago? Not his best, to be honest. I don't think that he was paired with the perfect inkers for that, even though, of course, guys like Klaus Janson are incredibly talented. It just seemed like a mismatch for that character and that type of story. But I didn't think his Batman was too bad. But, his Superman just didn't feel right. Didn't quite feel right. Hello from Argentina. Oh, thank you so much for watching, Sergio. That's really exciting. Anyway, what to say about this? Spider-Man's getting his butt kicked, and Norman Osborn is, I guess, now sort of a redeemed good guy, and he's made Spider-Man a new suit, and that debuts here. So that's the big change here, is that he's sort of got this almost goblin glider thing that's like shaped like a web, and he's got little goblin bombs, but what they do is they shoot like they explode with little nano spiders that he can control. So a little bit more of a high-tech suit. We've seen some high-tech Spidey gear here and there in the past. It's an interesting move, though, to have him ally so closely with a long-term villain. One thing I noted, though, John Romita Jr. has started drawing Norman's hair differently, okay? Norman's hair is supposed to be really wavy, but he keeps it tightly cropped. That means that, the artists used to do this wavy pattern going from front to back. But Romita Jr., I think, maybe forgot, because he's got it going left to right, so this looks like cornrows to me. That's not how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to be wavy front to back to indicate, the sort of wavy texture. There is hair like that. Anyway, so going in some interesting directions. Mostly, I like this for the artwork. The story, I feel, is moving a little bit slowly in terms of explaining the drama behind the scenes. But we'll get there. We'll get there. What else is out this week? Latest issue of Judgment Day. Boy, anything I say at this point would be sort of repeating myself. I decided to follow along with Marvel's big event, which is just that, a few of the Eternals have decided to start hunting the X-Men. The Avengers are sort of getting mixed up in the middle to protect mutants. Okay? Yeah, that's what to say. Look, the art by this Valerio Schiti is definitely pretty to look at. And who does the coloring in this? Let me double... Yeah, Marta Gracia. Love Marta Gracia's work. Love it, love it. So the coloring is honestly probably what I like the most in these issues. Here's the premise at this point. Tony Stark, being the sort of mad wizard guy he is, teamed up with Phastos from the Eternals, a guy who's kind of like Forge. He can build almost anything. And they revived a dead Sentinel because the Sentinels... Sentinel, I'm saying Sentinel. I meant Celestial, excuse me. The Celestials are essentially the gods of the Eternals. And they figured if they revived a Celestial, it could command the bad Eternals to stop what they're doing. Instead, it's come back to judge all of humanity. And the world will live or die based on how good they are. It starts out weird. He judges Captain America as a failure because he hasn't made the world better like he aims to. I'm like, if Captain America doesn't get to pass the test of being a good person, the scale is all over the place. You basically can just make up any rationale for who's good and who's bad. I don't know, that's a little weird. They pulled out the Ex Machina too soon. Maybe. What can I say? Beyond that, it's not really for me. There are some fun fights going on, but it also feels like this is a big event that's going to end with everything status quo. I just can't see how this is really going to change anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too cynical because I've been reading superhero books for too long. Oh, Keith Stoll's in here. And Keith is actually somebody that sent me something like I was talking about with that P.O. box. Keith made a custom Funko Pop that looks like me. So I'll have that video up this week to show you stuff like that. Pretty amazing. Keith, thank you again. Very, very unique. Warlord Crow got a thumbs up. I know, I don't know what to say. The colors, I think, are gorgeous, right? Like, look at a page like this where it's, like, so blue, but there are different hues to delineate things. I think that that's pretty clever. And they're bringing Star Fox back, because I guess he can control people's emotions, right? Maybe make them be good people? Maybe? I don't know if that would be moral. Star Fox, when he was created in the 70s, it's like, oh, he can affect your pleasure centers and, like, make you feel good. And he's also strong and stuff. But, the Dan Slott She-Hulk run addressed how weird Star Fox's powers are. I mean, he's a walking roofie. He's a pretty weird guy to have as a hero and as compared to a villain. But he is technically an Eternal. He's an Avenger, so I get why they'd throw him in. These events can be fun, but they're never consequential. Every once in a while, one of these events can, like, have some consequences. You know, I mean, I didn't like Civil War too much, but it did end with, like, the death of Captain America for a while, and that did change some status quos. You know, it elevated both Falcon and Winter Soldier, especially Winter Soldier. So, I mean, it can have an effect that's not necessarily the intended impact. Secret Wars. You know, the original Secret Wars wasn't probably intended to do this, but it led to the creation of Venom. So some of these can end up having, like, you know, lasting impacts, and some of them sometimes can be good. I would say that the original Infinity Gauntlet series was good. They built up to it properly in Silver Surfer for over a year, I would say. Jim Starlin built that story up, and it had enough, like, sort of setup that the 6 issues could just be this fun, over-the-top action stuff. I don't know. Star Fox and Purple Man should run for office. Why is Star Fox the good guy and Purple Man is the bad guy? Kind of weird. Let me move forward, though, because there's a few comics I want to talk about. This is Wolverine Patch, written by Larry Hama. It's basically just a 5-issue, self-contained story about Wolverine set just before Larry Hama's run on the Wolverine original series began, the original ongoing series. Dean McCaskill says, what's your most precious book you own? I don't know that any of them are necessarily overly precious to me, but some of them have sentimental value. You know, I've got some early Tick and Ninja Turtles comics that just represent a time when I was really getting excited about what comic books could be, realizing that they were a little bit more than just the color superhero stuff. Also, like an early Spider-Man story, Death of Kraven. That I just really like that. I really made me fall in love with both Mike Zeck and J.M. DeMatteis. And then some of my friends' books that were created that I sort of was, like, you know, helping in terms of proofreading and a little bit of editing. So, like, you know, Walking Dead #1 and Battle Pope and Invincible #1, things like that. Those are what's precious to me, I guess. Not necessarily super valuable, but they're precious to me. So anyway, Wolverine Patch. This is the final issue of the story. It's fun. Look, it's a really straightforward story in a way. Some Russian mutants are trying to escape their restrictive government. They end up on this island Madripoor, where Wolverine used to operate under, like, the identity of Patch. He just put on an eye patch, called himself Patch, and it was like people weren't supposed to know who he was. This one has, like, all these forces trying to control those mutants that Patch is helping, that Wolverine is helping. We've got Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., we've got, like, a KGB agent from Russia, we've got the Crown Prince of Madripoor and his mercenaries, and then the General Koi that runs the military on the island. They're all going after these mutants, and Wolverine is looking to protect them. It's fun. It's got mandroids and the Soviet equivalent, you know, just big giant robot warriors. And Larry Hama, if he's writing something that's military based, you know, he served in Vietnam, in country during the Vietnam War. He has experience with simple things that like feel very authentic when he writes them. Chain of command, terms for, military tactics and cleanup and stuff like that, that it just works very well. And these are a bunch of different military factions. This feels like the best of G.I. Joe, if you've ever enjoyed his G.I. Joe work, where you've got all these different factions all sort of going after the same thing, and one hero really up against crazy odds stuck in the middle. It reads nice and clean. It's a fun action story. If you ever just sort of feel like, hey, I like the idea of Wolverine, but, he's so bogged down in continuity, pick up these 5 issues of Wolverine Patch. It looks good, and it's a really fun, clean story. I definitely give it a recommendation. It ends very solidly. Is this Wolverine story based in the 80s? Not explicitly, but a little bit, because it's set in a very specific period of continuity that was probably more like, it might have been around 87 or 88 or 89, somewhere in that. Probably 89, I guess. I don't know. When can we expect a comic made by you? I've got certain things in the works. I'll leave it at that. It's probably too early to announce anything, so I won't really announce anything, but I've got a few projects in the works. And the biggest trick for me in getting a comic out is that beyond doing YouTube, which is, it pays some of my bills, it doesn't pay all my bills, so I still have a part-time job. And when I say part-time, that's 28 hours a week, which is really only about a day and a half off. And I usually have to work late for this job, so it's really more like 30 or so hours. So it's a little tricky to carve out any more time. I've already cut out as much as I can from movies and TV and video games as possible. I do digest a little of that because you have to have different things influencing and inspiring you and keep up to date. But I've cut a lot of that out. I really work a lot these days. I need just a little more time to speed up the comic stuff. Oh, look at this. My sister's here and says, just saw a car in the parking lot with Avengers as their license plate. Oh, that's fun. Did you get to, by any chance, drive the Thunderbird, Jeannie? My sister's visiting my father, and I used to have a 1957 Thunderbird, but I sold it to my father a few months ago. It was had to make ends meet with bills and stuff, so I sold that. Okay, Hama's run on Wolverine started in 93. This is set right before that, so that's interesting that Hama's run on Wolverine started in 93. That doesn't sound right, though, because Hama's run on Wolverine had Mark Silvestri as the artist for a lot of it, and Silvestri left to form Image Comics around 92. So I think that Hama started before 93. Maybe tomorrow you'll get to drive it? I hope so. It's a really unique experience. Just be sure, when you're driving, the steering's looser, so just be aware of that, and you need to start braking earlier. You need to push harder because it's the old-fashioned drum brakes as compared to our modern stuff. I'm working 2 part-time jobs and going to school full-time. I completely feel you. Glad I'm able to make it for the stream. I'm glad so many of you are here for the stream. I'll try to catch as many comments as possible. So that was everything that I read from Marvel. Everybody told me that this Human Target run by Tom King and Greg Smallwood was incredible. They did 6 issues. They're taking a small hiatus. They did or Tom King mostly, did this sort of little anthology book. And so I'm picking this up, and then I'm going to get the trade paperback of the first 6 issues and jump onto the monthly of Human Target, because I hear it's excellent. What can I say about this? I mean, you've got Greg Smallwood just doing a couple panels to set the stage for 3 different stories that are told. One involves Guy Gardner, Green Lantern. One involves Booster Gold. And then one involves Fire. 3 people from the old Justice League International team. Hello, Tari. did he create Patch? He did not create Patch. He did not create it. Yeah, that was Claremont and Buscema, I believe. I believe Buscema created that identity. So anyway, we're following 3 different stories by 3 superheroes telling unique stories, like, and there's seemingly nothing related about them, okay? Artwork is uniformly great. We've got, hold on, let me get this right. Yeah, Raphael Albuquerque is drawing the Green Lantern story. Kevin Maguire is drawing the Booster Gold story. And Mikhail Janin is drawing the Fire story. Each of them is sort of a mystery, okay? Each of them is being narrated by that superhero. But they're very disjointed. You're like, what is going on here? There are 3, like, the Booster Gold story is really, really funny. The Green Lantern story is very confusing. The Fire story is very sad and romantic. And I'm not going to give away how it ties together, because it's like, well, wait a minute. This is about Christopher Chance, the human target. It all comes together at the end in a very clever way. Wow, a super chat from TJ Rip. Thanks for answering everyone so thoughtfully, even the non-super class. Wonderful show. That's so nice of you. Really means a lot. Thank you for the kind words. That's fuel in my tank to keep going. What's cool about this is some of Tom King writing some really great dialogue. Each character does feel different. Guy Gardner, bit egotistical, but it's not really over the top. He's just sort of a jerk, but like a noble jerk. Booster Gold is like hilariously obtuse, and his little robot assistant Skeets is hilarious in this, like, correcting him. Fire, like, we really get to know who she is and who she was before being a superhero. It's amazing. Dr. Shubill with a super chat saying, "Hi Chris, just wondering if you get into drama-based stuff like Road to Perdition and Southern Bastards." Absolutely I do. Absolutely. That's what I love about comics, is how versatile they can be in telling all sorts of amazing different kinds of stories. Some genres that I like aside from superheroes, I really like autobiographies or just biographies. I like those a lot. I like crime fiction, mysteries. I really like how that crime fiction works in comics. It's even getting like really pulpy. Not necessarily, like, I don't know. I like that a lot. But yeah, Southern Bastards, that was a really great book. It's really tough what happened, behind the scenes there. It's not really something I want to get into. But I will say that artist of that, also a writer, Jason Latour, is a tremendously creative guy. And I don't know the truth of, like, all the accusations, but, I hope he can actually have a path towards redemption, because Jason's always been very, very kind to me. And I know that that's not necessarily scientific in saying, like, well, he's been nice to me, so he couldn't have harassed all those women. No, he might have. But when I was very, very, very sick with COVID, not every person I knew in the world reached out to check on me. Jason was one of those people that did, and he seemed to care. So I do feel that, like, he's so talented. No matter how you feel about him, he's so goddamn talented. He's got an Instagram account where he's been posting art history and art, and those are some really interesting videos. So it's a very complex situation. I don't know exactly what he may have done to harass women at conventions. That's just flat out wrong. I can't support that. There should be a price to pay, and maybe he's paid it because he's not really working in the industry now. And Southern Bastards, that's a loss. That was a really great, amazing comic that I wish we could see more of. But I would like to think that there's a path for redemption, I'd like to think. Have I read any of Public Domain? I haven't, Kyle. I do like Chip Zdarsky, but I can't read everything, and I haven't read it. But I've heard it's interesting. And getting into Peter Bagg, speaking of ugly but beautiful. Yeah, Dave, I got to meet him at the Emerald City Comic-Con last weekend. Really, really nice gentleman. Anyway, I give this a strong recommend, folks. If you haven't, like, I haven't read the first 6 issues, so I was like, am I going to be lost? Doesn't matter. This is a standalone story. 3 different beautifully illustrated stories that do tie together at the very end in a very clever, pretty amusing way, too. I really think that this is really cool. The new Joseph Smith biography is really good. Is that the one you're talking about that's done by Noah Van Sciver? Or is it by somebody else? Because I think Noah's a really funny, talented guy, too. Moving forward. By the way, nice to see you, Dan. Thanks for jumping into the live chat. This is the second thing that I got from DC. Batman White Knight presents Red Hood, Book 2. This is sort of a 2-issue story set in Sean Gordon Murphy's White Knight Batman universe. If you don't know, he's sort of got his own alternate reality. He does like little mini-series set in there. The current one is set where Bruce Wayne had been locked up. There's a guy named Derek Powers that's really taken over Gotham City, controls its police, a lot of surveillance and stuff. We're getting a little side story following Jason Todd in a flashback where he had quit being Robin, but he briefly mentored a girl to become a new Robin. It's a redemption story, and I love the story. The first issue had artwork by Simone DeMeo. This one has, like, it's the second issue, and there's a different artist. I don't understand. If you're only doing 2 issues, you can't keep some consistency there. This is not bad artwork, but it's not as good. It's not as clean. Let me find an example. There was just some storytelling choices. There's lots of this sort of like breaking the panel where I don't necessarily think it's strictly necessary, and it creates some strange storytelling bits. Where was it like that I was totally confused what was happening? Here it is. Okay, so there's a bad guy with sonic powers, right? This new female Robin is like broken into his house to find him, and here she's getting hit by him. And I thought that was him here, and I was like, wait, that's a really awkward, like, use of his powers. No, this is supposed to be another panel, and he's breaking out of that panel border while she's breaking out of hers. This is supposed to be right after he zaps her. So, but that looks like they're in the same shared space. So that's an example of what I mean by slightly confusing storytelling. It's not a bad style or anything. There's also, though, like a lot of emptiness to the backgrounds that when you look at it closely, you realize that the colorist is doing a fair amount of heavy lifting to add texture and visual interest here. And I'm not saying every panel needs a background. Far from it. You just need one really good establishing shot, like, per page. But, you know, I wouldn't say that any of these count as a good establishing shot for helping me understand where characters are in relation to each other and the environment. So I didn't love the art in this. The story was cool, but I did not love the art in this. Sorry. I haven't talked about the Shang-Chi story yet, Graham. I haven't talked about any of the news quite yet. I'm just blasting through a few quick reviews, and within like about 10 minutes I'll start on the news segment. So you haven't missed anything like that yet. Radiant Black. What can I say about Radiant Black? I can't say anything specific about this, but I might have something very small to contribute to it in the future. I might. We'll see how things go. I might have something small to contribute to it. Anyway, this is the latest issue, number 17. Let's see. Steve Sorensen with a super chat. That's nice of you. Nice to see you, Steve. The Hypo by Noah Van Sciver is good, Abe Lincoln. Oh, I've never read that. That sounds cool. Noah's really cool. Noah's like very funny but interesting. Like definitely a unique point of view. Here's what's cool about this issue of Radiant Black. Kyle Higgins co-writing this issue with Joe Clark, art by series regular Marcelo Costa. So, forget about all this. If you haven't read it, there's two characters in this. Two main characters, okay? This is Nathan. And he was the original Radiant Black. He temporarily died, you know, like his heart stopped for a minute, and his best friend ended up getting the powers, and his best friend has been Radiant Black for most of this series. In this issue, Nathan gets the powers back, and what's cool, though, is his friend also comes back from, like, briefly dying, and that leads to them sort of teaming up. They can't be Radiant Black at the same time, but they can shift back and forth. Marshall is his best friend, so like sometimes Marshall's Radiant Black and then immediately Nathan can be Radiant Black, leading to one really fun panel here where they're like splitting the powers and like both punching the villain shift at the same time. That can take this story in some really interesting ways, because when this started, I thought that Nathan was the main character, and we were meant to think that. And then all of a sudden, Marshall was the main character, and he was like, you know, a sort of lazy, not underachiever, and you were like, how is this guy going to be the main character? But then Nathan never quite left the story. It's going in some really interesting directions here. Like, I can't think of another clean example of... No, okay, I can think of one that's a little bit like it. There used to be a Captain Marvel run when Rick Jones, the Hulk's friend, Captain America's former sidekick, he could hit negabands and turn into, or swap places technically, with Captain Marvel. And the other one went to the negative zone. That was a little bit of two guys sort of sharing one life, you know? But this is a little different. It's really, really fun. This is good. This is really good superhero stuff, guys, because even though the powers are unique and different and cool, and there's some interesting sort of world building constantly going on in the background, the main characters are the draw. They're really interesting people that you feel like are real people. Yeah, Andrew, you're sort of right. On Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he says, wasn't that a plot that if you temporarily die and someone else gets the power? Sort of. There was only, there's one Slayer born per generation, basically. As soon as the Slayer dies, their power goes to the next person. That did happen in Buffy because at the end of season 1, Buffy was attacked by, like, the Master, this powerful vampire, and she stopped breathing. But her friend Xander did CPR and brought her back to life. So in season 2, turns out a new Slayer, Kendra, had been called. And Kendra eventually gets killed, and that's what activates Faith. So, like, you don't know who the next person will be, but the Watchers have, like, an idea of, like, never mind. There's too much mythology there. I was about to explain all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer to you. You guys don't need that. It was like a show from the late 90s, early 2000s. Just watch it. It's honestly good TV. Oh yeah, Firestorm. Yep, that is two dudes. And I mean, yeah, that's a good example too, because Ronnie and the Professor would talk to each other while being Firestorm. So that was kind of cool. It's not quite like Shazam, where, you know, Billy Batson says Shazam and he turns into Shazam. No, it's like two people sharing like one thing. But this is like two people sharing the powers. It's so cool. Up to season 4. Awesome, Dave Q. Trust me, I have nothing good to say about Joss Whedon anymore. But Buffy and Angel had a lot of talented writers and producers and actors, and those shows are cool. I stand behind them. I think they're eminently watchable. Darkhawk had a similar dual persona gimmick in recent miniseries. Oh, did he? Yeah. I'm sort of not remembering that well. Folks, this horror book is so cool. I Hate This Place, written by Kyle Starks with art by Artyom Topolin. It's just got every bonkers thing in the world going on, and we can't figure out how it fits together, but it seems like it must. These two ladies, they're a couple, they inherited a farm, but every night, things like hundreds and hundreds of ghosts appear, but they won't go into the house. So as long as you're in the house, you're fine. But at night, there's ghosts. In the forest, there are monsters, spider monsters. There's this huge horned man. None of this seems to fit together. While all of this is going on, they've hired a ghost hunter to try to explain things, and you've got this bank robber who's buried money on their land, and he's trying to find it. So you've got all these insane things happening at once. You've got these gigantic spiders. You've got psychopath criminals. It's just, you never know where this stuff's going. A huge hole with a pit into nothing. This is a great, sort of horror mystery book. But I don't want to describe it beat for beat. All I can say is, look, the art is definitely emotive and exciting. I think that it's got some real personality to it. It's both funny and scary. And this particular issue ends with a nice little bonus thing. An essay on the history of paranormal detectives by Benito Cereno, an old friend of mine. We know it's good when you use the word bonkers. I do like using that word. Yeah, J Muse, the art style is so cool. This is a good book. And this essay goes through the history in literature of the origin of detectives that investigate the occult, going all the way up to stuff like, Ghostbusters and stuff like that. But, starting in 1841. It's really cool. It's a great essay. This is a great book. It's only issue 4. If you can find it, I totally recommend I Hate This Place. And if you feel like you can't find the early issues, I'm sure there will be a trade paperback soon. But it's damn good. It's horror and comedy. Maybe I don't know. It's just good. It's just good. Only 2 more monthlies for me to bang through. Dark Spaces Wildfire. This came out last week. I just had trouble finding it because my regular store didn't have it in stock. Written by Scott Snyder, art by Hayden Sherman. What is it? It's a mystery. It's a heist movie. Okay, that's what it is. It's a heist. It's a heist movie. It ain't a movie. This is a comic. It's a heist story about 4 women firefighters who are actually prisoners in California, and the correctional officer that oversees them. And they're really good at that. And that is a real thing that several states have. They use, sometimes prisoners can volunteer to learn firefighting skills and help pay off their debt and maybe make a little bit of money, and I do mean a little bit, fighting forest fires. But one of these people was a white-collar criminal, and she knows that there's a mansion in the fire's path that has a lot of crypto in it. A lot. And they all agree, including the correctional officer, to, in the middle of the fire, get up to that mansion, steal the crypto, let that place burn down to cover their tracks. That's a decent premise, for a story, I think. Because you've got this external threat of a fire that's very, and they talk about it constantly, how you can't control it. There's always going to be, flare-ups and unexpected things. The wind changing direction, wild animals crossing their paths. They for instance, some cougars or something like that, so some wildcats come across them. How do you deal with little problems like that? And that's what a good heist movie does, is it you've got a plan, you outline exactly what the plan is, and then you just keep throwing in obstacles, and you've got a ticking clock, because they've got to like report back to, you know, the whole fire team that's running things within 3 hours. You love the panel layout on the right page. Maybe it was on a previous page, but like, this is good storytelling, folks. Look, great establishing shot. Where are we? You know, what are we looking at? Good time, good controlling the audience for like timing as she's trying to type in a password before the 10 seconds are up. It's hard to control a reader for pacing, but like deciding what you want to do with panel layout is one way to do it with inserts and stuff. It's really good. This is a good example of solid storytelling. There's a good establishing shot of like, you know, the main floor of the residence once they get in. Wow, hold on. Super chat here that I want to acknowledge. And that's from John Dorsey. Thank you, John. Smaller stuff I picked up last week. Mindset #1 by Zach Kaplan and John Pearson from Vault. Vault's doing some good stuff these days, aren't they? And Storm King Comics, don't know them, brings us John Carpenter's Tales of Science Fiction, Interference Pattern #1. The art is stunning for both. Well, I love John Carpenter, so, you know, if he puts his name on something, that's something that makes me curious. But I haven't seen that one. Anyway, I'll stop there before I go too far, because suffice it to say, there's a wrinkle that none of them could have anticipated. They're trying to think of all the ways the heist could get sidetracked. They think of a lot of it, and they deal with a lot of it, and then something very weird happens at the end. Now, I'm not talking supernatural necessarily, I'm just saying something changes. Rick Ray is agreeing that Mindset is fantastic. Pearson's artwork is very Sienkiewicz McKean. Oh, I like that style sometimes, with the right story. With the right story. Anyway, if you want a good heist story, where there's a lot of stakes, because, you know, these are criminals. Like, if they get caught, and they could get caught, they could get killed in the fire. There's a lot that could go wrong here. This is high stakes. It's good. It's real good. So glad I took a chance on it. Last monthly thing I picked up, I've been hearing good things about Barbaric, and this is like, I guess, the first issue of like, you know, the next sort of like mini-series, written and drawn by some really talented guys. Written by Michael Morecci, I'm guessing, but that's a guess. I haven't heard that. Artist Nathan Gooden. Ooh, this is good art, but it's funny too. This is like, imagine a D&D world with orcs, vampires, barbarians. Main guy, Owen, has an enchanted axe, really a cursed axe, that like talks to him and eats and stuff like that. It feasts on blood, and he's attached to it. Anyway, in this they have to fight a bunch of giant vampires, and I say they. It's him, his vampire barbarian friend Steel, and this witch who I don't know because I haven't read enough of these. But the art is so good. It goes in some really interesting directions. Later in this, the good guys get on a ship, and the ship is attacked by a kraken. Look at how gorgeous that is. Obviously, you can sort of reference certain ships for this part, but you can't reference all of that. That's really good looking. That's really cool. And this does not shy away from the violence. Like this little guy, like that was piloting the boat, he just gets his skin ripped off. He's gone. That does not look like a good end. It's funny because like the axe can get like drunk on some blood and like think others disgusting. The vampiric sword sounds like Elric. Absolutely, some of that for inspiration. Absolutely, but he's a barbarian, so he's a little different. He's more like a Conan guy. Anyway, it's good, folks. I'm so glad I gave this a shot. I gotta find the early issues of Barbaric. Clever dialogue, funny in places I didn't expect it to be, exciting, moves at a really good pace, artwork, gorgeous. Vault Comics, they've got a winner on their hands with this creative team. I hope that they can keep these two in place as long as possible. Hey, nice to hear that. Hey, to my father. So that was everything that was new. I just also always pick up some back issues if I can get a good deal. Found this one. Donatello's my favorite Ninja Turtle. Found his issue of the mini-series. That's awesome. Glad to have that. Dreadstar. Don't know if you guys have ever heard of that at this point, but Jim Starlin had his own space opera story, and Jim Starlin's a really talented writer and a good artist too. Really good. Everybody told me when I did my She-Hulk episode that I should have talked more about the Charles Soule Javier Pulido run. So I found this trade paperback that collects their entire run. This is out of print, so that was kind of nice to find. And then I got a belated birthday present from my father, actually. So, Dad, if you're still listening with my sister, thank you. Look at this. These are 1930s Mickey Mouse comic strips by a guy named Floyd Gottfredson. And trust me, Mickey Mouse, you think like, well, he doesn't have much personality, does he? He's just sort of a cute mascot, and that's about it. Well, Mickey Mouse used to actually have personality. He'd go on adventures. He could get jealous about like people going after Minnie Mouse. He's funny and clever and interesting. He's an actual character back in the 30s. I'm excited to, at some point, talk about this era in a Comic Tropes episode, but I'm very excited to read that. This is like 2 volumes. There's a lot of these Mickey Mouse books. And then I just wanted to share this. This is a print that I got from a guy named Staz Johnson. He's a comic book artist. He's worked for Marvel and 2000 AD. He's great. I love Staz. He's got a really good Twitter account. He shares cool artwork that he's done. I think he's so talented. And he just seems like a really nice, genuine person. And he made like this limited run of prints based on Eddie Munson from this past season of Stranger Things. And he made it look like, an old sort of Bronze Age Marvel Comics cover. I thought that like it looks really, really good. So yeah, I was happy to support him on that. I thought I'd share that. Master Eddie Munson is the master of puppets. Great scene. But like all this fake weathering is really well done too. Really authentic design. I thought Staz did a great job on that. These are sold out, but if you aren't familiar, Staz Johnson on Twitter, he's done some limited prints before. I got one that he did which made it look like a Jaws comic adaptation from the 1970s. Yeah. There is a Stranger Things comic, Kid Valhalla. There is. Yeah, Metallica is retro now, even though they're still around. They're retro. So I'm going to start drawing, and this week I decided to flesh out, so to speak, a dragon. Because House of the Dragon has debuted, and I thought that this would be fun to sort of ink, because there's a lot of room for texture with a dragon. So I've sort of laid out my pencils for the most part, and I'm gonna peck away at inking while I talk to you about the news of the week. I love 80s Bronze Age comics. Me too. Big time. Let's see what we've got for news this week, and hopefully some good stuff. Oh, you know what? Before I even talk about the news of the week, tell you what I'll do. I want to give a quick review of a comic book related movie that I saw this week. I was really hoping I'd love this movie, and I didn't. I'll just let that out front. There's a movie that came out called Funny Pages. I don't know how many of you out there may have seen the trailer for it or anything. Written and directed by Owen Klein, as in the son of Kevin Kline and Phoebe Cates. And it's about like a high schooler that's just graduated, and instead of like sort of doing what his parents want him to do and go to college, he's just got, part-time jobs and is trying to break in as sort of an indie alternative comic creator. He loves comics. That's what he wants to do with his life. Great performances, I will say that. And the art was technically well done, sound, lighting, camera decisions, compositions, editing for the most part. But here's why it didn't quite work for me. I don't feel it quite got to the core of what it was supposed to be about. It's a very cynical movie, just to be clear. It's about, like, I guess, having the wrong mentors in life. This kid chooses... It both begins and ends with, like, some of the most horrific mentor, like, lessons from an artist you could possibly imagine. Like, two very different, horrible scenarios. And it doesn't end on a happy note or anything. I guess it's all just about, like, maybe just choosing mentors carefully, I think. It ends very abruptly, so I had to really think about it. But it was just a little too cynical for me. It wasn't a bad movie on any technical level. The performances were sincerely good, and I was enjoying it for most of it. Dragged a little in the middle, but the third act, it just all fell apart for me. Funny pages. Nancy says hi. Hi, Nancy. Thanks for watching. That's so kind of you. So anyway, Funny Pages. If you're curious, that is a movie about comics. People are in comic book stores a lot, talking about comics, etc. But it didn't work for me. So I just wanted to bang out that little review and say I wish I could endorse it more strongly, because there's not many movies like that. It's different background material that a lot of us, I think, would care about. But and if you saw it and you liked it, like, that would make me happy, because I would love for people to enjoy it. But it just didn't quite work for me. Cautionary tale. I guess, yeah, I think you could call it a cautionary tale. Although nothing initially was quite leading me to think that that's the kind of movie it was. I really thought that this kid would get ahead and find some measure of success, and that's not really where it went. So that's okay. Maybe going in and understanding that that's the kind of movie it is could make somebody enjoy it a little better, to be honest. But I feel like the trailers instead presented it as sort of an oddball comedy, and that's not exactly what it is, even though there's elements of that stuff within it. But let's get into the news, because there's some big, wild, wacky stuff. And that's what you're here for, right? Big, wild, wacky stuff. Let me start with the fact that Marvel has largely erased Shang-Chi off of its website. Specifically, if you go to the Marvel app to buy comics, they have erased all of their older, 1970s, 80s Shang-Chi Master of Kung Fu books. All the cool stuff by, writer Doug Mensch and Paul Gulacy. I don't know. I've never known how to pronounce that. It's all gone. Oh, Andrew Jefferson with his super chat saying, Mohawk Storm, yay or nay? Big yay. Love that look. Paul Smith created that. John Romita Jr. probably drew it the most, but yeah. So why is it gone? My first assumption was, some of it hasn't aged that well. Maybe they've decided to remove it because it's, honestly, like, a little racist sometimes. Could that be it? No. There is a specific reason why they removed it, and it has nothing to do with anything like that. I don't know why I didn't think of this right away, but a lot of the Shang-Chi comics had characters that Marvel didn't own. They licensed. The main villain was Fu Manchu. created by the Sax-Rohmer estate. Not created by the Sax-Rohmer estate, owned by the Sax-Rohmer estate, written by a guy named Sax-Rohmer, a British author of pulp novels. And so Marvel has decided not to renew that license this year. So those comics are full of Fu Manchu and a bunch of other creations from those book series. And so Marvel doesn't have the license to share those anymore, publish them. So the only way you can get them now, they're not going to be putting them in trade paperbacks or anything like that. They have in the past, and you can still find the back issues and the trade paperbacks and stuff, but yeah, no more moving forward. No new trade paperbacks or digital versions of the comics. It does not, Melendez, it does not have anything to do with Simu stating that he won't sign any of those because of stereotypes. It's purely that Marvel decided not to renew the license. It probably cost more than it was worth for what they were making on the old issues. It seems like it was purely a business decision. And, you know, they're creating all sorts of new Shang-Chi stories, so I think that Marvel just wants to focus more on the new stuff and let the old stuff fade away. And just to be clear, they've done that before. They did a Godzilla comic for a year. They've had Transformers and, you know, other stuff like ROM Space Knight. You know, they've done comics that are set in the Marvel Universe that then they don't renew a license to, so, you know, they just don't print it anymore. There are plenty of examples like that. Shogun Warriors. These are all books that were set in the Marvel Universe that they just don't print anymore. So that's all it is. It's just probably not selling enough. I can't believe that Fu Manchu is still under trademark after all this time. Yeah, I know. It's not a great character, just to be clear. It's pretty bad. But it obviously had some value in the past. But anyway. So yeah, that's the story. That said, while there is some, like, you know, very dated racism in those books, just the way they, like, even the good guys, the way they'll talk about Shang-Chi himself is not great. But there's also a lot of really cool artwork and a lot of interesting stories. So I do think that the back issues are worth reading. I think that they're pretty cool, but you have to understand that they're from a time in the past where things were not very sensitive. It's not a great look. And it's not going to be comfortable to read all of it. It's just not. So your mileage may vary on how much you even can enjoy something like that, which I understand. But I do think that, like, Paul Gulacy is a great artist that, like, did some really cool stuff. Moving on, I've got lots of news this week. This one's funny. So, obviously, Sandman came out on Netflix, and it seems to be doing very well for what it's worth. Like, it's very hard to know exactly where things are on streaming in terms of how many viewers something has, but there are places that track what the top viewed things are in streaming, and Sandman has been way up there for like 3 weeks since it debuted. Anyway, writer Neil Gaiman was obviously very protective of his creation and took a long time before he decided to do this adaptation. This week he told, or revealed I should say, like a pretty funny story of how he once sabotaged a potential Sandman movie from getting made in the past. Because, you know, with something this popular, trust me, people have been looking to adapt it for a long time. But he's had a hand in things because he created it, and he just doesn't have full approval on yes or no. Like DC has a bunch of yes or no too. There was at one point apparently going to be a live-action movie version of it, and in an interview with Deadline, that's like a Hollywood trade publication, Gaiman talked about the ideas for it, and he says that this script was like just a mess. Like, he says it's really just not just a bad Sandman script, just like one of the worst stories, like scripts he's ever come across. Okay, and I gotta tell you, like she shared some of it. By the way, it was going to be produced, it was being sort of like put together and run by a guy named Jon Peters. And you may have heard about him before if you're into comics. First of all, he got into doing comic book adaptations when he was attached as one of the producers on the 1989 Batman movie. And because that did well, he kept trying to do other comic book adaptation stuff. He was working on the Death of Superman movie that Kevin Smith tells some really funny stories about, where, like, you know, Kevin Smith says Jon Peters got really into spiders and kept saying, like, you got to have Superman fight a giant spider because it's like, you know, the deadliest creature out there, and it's like really exciting. We gotta have him fight a spider, a giant spider. And he's like, sure. And that movie obviously never happened, and thank goodness, because it doesn't sound like that would have been any good. But eventually Jon Peters did make a movie called Wild Wild West, based on the old TV show, and sure enough, what happens? The good guys fight a bad guy in the Old West with a giant mechanical spider. Well, Neil Gaiman talked about what the script for Sandman was going to be about, and they changed a lot of the mythology. First of all, Sandman himself, Morpheus, the Lord of the Dreams, was going to be presented as one of three triplet brothers. It's going to be Morpheus, Lucifer, the devil, and the Corinthian, who is a nightmare that Sandman created in the comics. But in this, those three guys, the Corinthian, Sandman, and Lucifer, are brothers. And what they're doing is they're all trying to get a hold of the ruby, helm, and bag of sand that in the comics, again, are like the three sources of Sandman's powers, or allow him to focus his sort of abilities. In this, those are just powerful objects that are out there in the world, and whichever one of the three of them can get it before the end of 1999 will rule the next millennium. Oh, and he did fight a giant spider in it. Well, Gaiman came across this and was like, oh my god, you know, like this just won't do well. It's a terrible idea. You know, how do I stop it? You know, because he didn't have the power to just say no. That was not an option. So what he did was he leaked the script, knowing how bad it was. He leaked it to Ain't It Cool News, which thank God is gone now, but for a while used to be a very powerful website in terms of shifting Hollywood attitudes. And the writers on Ain't It Cool News savaged the script, just, you know, took it to town. And that convinced Warner Brothers and Jon Peters to not go that way. They were like, oh, okay, nobody's actually interested in this take. And so Jon Peters decided to shift his attention then to Wild Wild West, which of course again had a giant spider. Hey, Andy Kuhn, were the three brothers named Larry, Moe, and Curly? They may as well have been. I mean, we've seen some adaptations of comics that are not very loyal. This makes me think the most of something like, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. You know, Alan Moore took that and was like, hey, let's do sort of a literary take where we combine a bunch of famous literature characters into some pulpy adventures. And then the movie was like, yeah, no, let's turn them all into like more like superheroes. Like give them vampire powers, and we'll add Tom Sawyer, even though he's from a different point in time. And, you know, like Mr. Hyde is like the Incredible Hulk. Yeah. Yeah. Eternals would have been much better received if they fought a giant spider. Maybe. Kind of sounds like what the Americans did for the Doctor Who movie. The Doctor Who movie is whatever, but it's not as bad as that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've read Fables Wukong. Love Fables. Love Fables. Fantastic, fantastic comic. Really, really good. Really, really good. Chris, in your humblest opinion, I'm not that humble. What Marvel or DC hero has the best looking costume and who has the worst? Best is probably Batman. You know why? I want to say Spider-Man because that is very unique and innovative, but Batman, you can tell it's him even in complete silhouette. So that probably gives it a small notch better, and it is sort of Bat-like. So probably Batman has the best. Who has the worst? Probably a character that's like come and gone, or a version. Like, you know, there was a time in the 90s where all the superheroes seemed to get like extreme armor versions of their outfits, and Captain America had an especially heinous looking one. NFL Super Pro is a pretty bad costume. I mean, he's supposedly doused in chemicals that give him superpowers, but then he puts on a football suit that gives him extra powers. And it says NFL on it, even though he didn't like have that officially licensed from the NFL. He was just his own guy. Is Wild Wild West the Will Smith film with the dreadful Will Smith title tune? Yeah. It's not a good take. It's not a good take. 90s Thor was pretty bad. That was very brief, but I know that what you're talking about. Gord Cummings with a generous super chat. Awesome dragon. Awesome guy. Me. I'll send you a package soon with my new comics. Oh, but please don't eat on casts. Misophonia man is me. I lost the thread a little at the end there, but thank you so much for the super chat. Yeah. Worst to draw might be Jack of Spades. Do you mean Jack of Hearts from the Avengers? I think so, but I might not know who Jack of Spades is if that's a different character. That's a possibility. I don't know everything. Oh, by the way, I'm drawing this, right? I'm drawing a dragon. Technically not a dragon, is it? The show is called House of Dragon. But these aren't dragons. These have 2 legs and wings. That's an Wyvern. Wyvern. Oh, okay, Andy. Just making sure I was on the same page. Totally agree. Oh, your eats last week, Papa John's. I have misophonia. Sorry about that. Sorry, Gord. Paste Pot Pete, best costume ever? Yup. Yeah. A wyvern, or Ivern, however you pronounce it, has 2 legs and wings. A dragon has 4 legs and wings. So, technically, this is the House of Dragon, Game of Thrones, those are not dragons. Those are wyverns. Those are a different thing. And just to be 100% clear, I don't know what George R. R. Martin, I don't know what he intended, but I do know from reading his stuff in, I think it was, whatever the book is that starts with Fire and Blood. He mentions that there are both dragons and wyverns. Hello, Marvin Nation. Nice to have you. Hello, Mandela Butterfly. I've just talked about a couple pieces of news, basically, but I'm going to move on to some others. I was just complaining, being very pedantic, about the fact that technically the dragons in House of Dragon on HBO are not dragons. They're wyverns. But if that's obnoxious to you guys, I do understand that. But I'll just jump back real quick and say, Andy, I sort of know what you mean about like Jack of Hearts. the face piece of like being in half, I'm not totally against that. I think that like dichotomy can work well in illustration when somebody has like two halves to a face. I think that Two-Face is interesting. Who else? Malekith. I think that that's interesting. But then he's got like, a very, very elaborate suit, that looks like a deck of cards and has chainmail and stuff. It's a lot of detail to have to illustrate for, a monthly book. It's a lot. It's too much. It's just too much. And I like that in the current She-Hulk run, he basically runs around in regular clothes. And I think that's the way to do it. Let's see. I missed something, but Jim Mahfood is answering somebody saying, yes, really great. My fave of his work is probably Terminator Secondary Objectives, inked by Carl Kessel. It's really incredible work. I'm curious now. What did the Vasek say? I gotta catch up here. Oh, and there's my wife. It actually has two more legs hidden behind its ears. Very small. Okay. I missed something here. Darn it. I was trying to scroll through, but that's annoying to you guys, so I'll stop. I missed it. Jack of Hearts would have been one of George Perez's first original designs. George created some pretty elaborate costumes. Sometimes they did look cool. You can see some similarities of what he did with Deathstroke the Terminator. There's chainmail, there's sort of the Buccaneer sort of boots and stuff like that. There's a lot of gear in different sections there that does give Deathstroke the Terminator some good color interest. Like it breaks things up in a new way. But that's probably not an easy character to draw like regularly on a monthly basis either. He created some pretty elaborate outfits for superhero books where a lot of people are just trying to draw like an idealized human body and then sort of have some interesting patterns across it. And if that's all you're doing, I would say that Spider-Man's one of the best. No question. But, yeah. What do I... we're talking about Paul Gulacy comics. Gotcha. Yeah, Paul Gulacy, man. So it is a shame that, a lot of people might not easily be able to come across those Shang-Chi Master of Kung Fu stories. But again, it really does seem to be purely business. That, Marvel just didn't feel it was worth paying the Sax Romer estate for those characters anymore. And I get it. Things have to make business sense. Let's see what else I've got for news, because I've got a bunch. Shenlong are Chinese dragons. Oh, we're learning stuff today. So tell you what, we just talked about Neil Gaiman and DC. Let me stay a little bit on DC. Probably a little too easy to beat up on them these days, but it's not really DC's fault. It's Warner Brothers is doing all sorts of weird stuff, And one of those is, of course, we've heard of HBO Max cutting all sorts of stuff. Well, they cut one thing. They gave the axe to one thing that I want to talk about, but let me acknowledge this. Dave E. with a super chat saying, I love George Perez's Scarlet Witch costume from the 90s. It was cool that it gave her some character and, personality. I think only he could make it look really good, but I know what you mean. I liked it when he drew it. So anyway, HBO Max has axed another thing that I think a lot of people were anticipating, and that was the upcoming Batman Caped Crusader animated show, which, among other producers, had Bruce Timm behind it. And Bruce Timm, of course, was one of the co-creators of the 90s Batman the Animated Series, which very critically acclaimed, really simplified a lot of Batman history and characters into a very, very nice version. Just one of the best versions of Batman. I think a lot of people can agree, especially when it was created just like really to cash in on the popularity of the movies, but then it really did sort of become its own thing. So he was going to do a new show, and like it was going to be on HBO Max because the goal was to make it a little more adult than like the original sort of kiddie show. It was more like family friendly. I shouldn't call it kiddie, but like make it a little more adult, which Batman can do well in. And it was going to try to focus a little bit more on Batman's detective skills than his gadgets. One of the other producers on it was Matt Reeves, or is Matt Reeves. I should say is, because it's not dead. Even though HBO Max has passed on this, that does not mean the show is dead yet. So the producers said that they are still working on it because there's other streaming services that have expressed interest in picking it up. And the top 3 that have been listed are Netflix, be an okay home, Apple Plus. If they picked it up, it would probably be around for a while because they don't have too much content. And most interesting to me, Hulu. It does feel like a show that would like feel appropriate on Hulu. But the funny thing about that, of course, is who owns Hulu? Disney. Who owns Marvel? But they could potentially pick up the Batman show. I think that would be pretty funny, to be honest. I think that would be funny. So let's sort of keep up our hopes because, just to be clear, guess who the head writer is? Ed Brubaker. Man, if anyone can help guide a good Batman show where it's like about using his detective skills to solve problems, I feel like Ed Brubaker is, it's on paper, that sounds perfect. On paper, that sounds really, really smart. So, I would like to see that show survive, and who knows? We'll just have to sort of keep up our hopes. With all due respect, screw Discovery and David Zaslav, he has no respect for animation. He doesn't seem to have a lot of respect for Warner Brothers. He really wants to make his mark. Didn't Disney buy Fox when Fox had Gotham, thus already giving Disney a Batman? They did buy Fox, but I don't think they own the Fox TV stations, the Fox networks. They just own stuff that's created by 20th Century Fox Studios. And I don't think that that's who created the Gotham show. It aired on a Fox television station, but Disney does not own that television station. That's a separate company. Ed Brubaker is a great writer. One of my favorites. People don't realize companies are about making money? No, I think that we do. You would think Warner Brothers would want to keep its DC properties in-house. Yes, you would think that. You would think that would make sense. But, that's why we're not businessmen, right? Did you see the Marvel Legends Gore action figure? No, I'm afraid I didn't. It's not really... I don't collect them, so I'm not super plugged in there. No, I don't know what TV series you're talking about, Dean. I didn't know that Ed Brubaker had a TV series on Amazon. Huh. Wow. I thought that I was plugged in, included to Brubaker stuff, but somehow that definitely eluded me. I feel dopey, but yeah. Just being honest. Huh. I'll have to look into it at some point. Miles Teller, yeah. At least they didn't axe the new Superman cartoon yet. I don't know too much about that one yet. But speaking of David Zaslav, I do have one piece of news about him. So one thing that he's wanted to do since Discovery bought Warner Brothers is he wants his own, industry publications call it like his own Kevin Feige. In other words, a producer that's overseeing all of the DC stuff. Try to unify it a little bit more. Add some, just get some consistency in. Get some consistency in there. And apparently, the top person that Warner Discovery wants right now is a producer named Dan Lin. I had to look him up because I wasn't overly familiar by just hearing the name, but he's been a producer on some successful things. The Aladdin live-action movie, that did do well. The Lego movie, I like that a lot. So supposedly, for some reason, that's the guy that they want, and we'll see if he accepts that offer and they work something out. But it sounds like they're getting close to having somebody in that role, and it would be called DC Chief, and they would oversee all this sort of TV shows and movies under one person, which does make sense. It does make sense. I haven't seen Alan Moore's The Show. I haven't seen that yet. I do want to see that. Hello, Skullman. Speaking of animation, have you ever watched Adventure Time? I've seen the first several episodes of the first season, but I didn't keep up. A lot of my friends love it, so if I had extra time, I'd be curious to see more of it. But no, I don't know a whole lot about it. I just know sort of the basic premise of a post-apocalyptic world, and there's Jake and his dog that can stretch and morph and stuff. I like Lemon Grab a lot. Unacceptable! I just amused myself while blowing out my speakers, right? Blowing out your speakers, my microphone. Let's see, does Marvel still have rights to the Malibu characters? Yeah. They've got the Malibu characters. They've got the cross-gen characters. I haven't heard about them doing anything with the Malibu characters lately, but if they want to retain the trademarks on them, they have to, use them at least once every 5 years just to sort of show that they still are using them. Otherwise, somebody could try to start using them on their own because you're not protecting or enforcing your copyright if you don't do it once every 5 years. How's Little Bean? Thanks for asking. He's good. He's good. He's getting to be an older kitty, but he seems to be doing well. Thank you for asking. That is the only pet Chrissy and I have at this point. Others have all moved on. It's tough. It's tough. I do sort of want a dog, but you have to change up your whole life to do something like that. It's not that much different than having a kid. You got to have a house set up for them, and a schedule for walking them, and I get it. Chrissy's pretty strict about hey, we could potentially get a dog, but I have to basically prove that we're ready for it by getting the house totally set up. And you can glance here and see that in the background I've just sort of this is our basement, but I've got just piles or not piles, but boxes of stuff, and I've got some stacks of comic books near me. That's not a conducive environment to a dog. Does Bean go outside and hunt? Nope, he's purely indoor. That's great to hear, Dean. I think Ed Brubaker's amazing. Let me move on to some more news. Here, this is another tidbit. Little news. There was going to be apparently a fourth Star Trek film set in that Kelvin timeline. At least that's what Paramount keeps saying. None of the actors have said that they've got a deal locked in or anything, but Paramount keeps saying that they're going to do that. But it's hit another delay. The last director that they had signed up for it was Matt Shackman. Well, he's withdrawn because he is in the final stages of signing to direct the Fantastic Four movie, which is definitely moving forward, which will, like, has an actual release date. They're going to have that ready by November of 2023. So they need to get going, whereas the Star Trek movie doesn't have everything lined up, like a script and, like, locked in all the actors. So, yeah. So he's moving on. Star Trek movie delayed, but Fantastic Four moving forward. And if you don't know Matt Shakman, you may have seen some of his stuff, actually. He directed all of WandaVision, first of all, which, he had to come up with a lot of different visual looks for that. And I thought that WandaVision was very impressive on several of its technical levels. He's also directed Game of Thrones, The Boys, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Twiggy's birthday is tomorrow. Happy early birthday, little Twiggy. Hey, EJ Sue is here. Having a dog is like having a child that never grows up. I can understand that. Yeah, wow, we've got some interesting pros in the chat tonight. We've got Jim Mahfood, Andy Kun, EJ Sue. Some great comics by those folks. It's a privilege to have you guys here, along with everybody, really. Thank you so much, everybody, for, like, joining in the chat and stuff. Have you ever thought about getting a gremlin? Probably not for me. Probably not. Isn't there going to be an CG animated Gremlins show soon? I feel like Sei Chun, the guy that runs what's that comic book publisher? Oh, I'm so dumb. I'm forgetting. There's a comic book publisher out there that's working on a Gremlins animated show, and I'm just totally blanking on his publishing imprint right now. Somebody out there that's smarter or has better access to Google will have to tell me. But yeah, Tales of the Mogwai, maybe? Something like that, or just Mogwai. There's going to be a animated Gremlins show. I like Gremlins. I'm surprised that there was never a Gremlins 3. How about a Mogwai? Sure. Andrew Jefferson saying, did you see the new Damage Control comic had a backup by McDuffie's wife? I did. Backup had the intern's mother fight Thanos. Main story was just okay. I did flip through it at the store, and mostly because I love the premise of Damage Control, and I like that Dwayne McDuffie's widow wrote a piece of it, but the main story just didn't really hook me too much. It's like a new character. I like the existing Damage Control team. I'd like to see more of them. That's supposed to be an HBO Max original, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the projects thrown away. Well, I haven't heard that it is yet, but yeah. Rick Remender's Deadly Class and Vengeance books are almost done. He hasn't announced a new book or anything. What's he doing? I don't know. I'll have to ask him. He still does stuff with Image too, like Scumbag. Well, that did just wrap up. Excuse me. I don't know. TKO Studios. Thank you, Adam Frasher. Yes. Seishun's publishing company is TKO Studios. He's the guy working on the Mogwai show. Excited for Boys Season 4? Absolutely. Season 3 was fantastic. Big step up from Season 2, I would say. Big step up. Big step up. Only I step down. Whoops, if I sing too good, YouTube will not let me monetize, so I better not sing too well. Chud, Gremlin, or Critter, who would you have more of a problem with? The Critters. Chuds are easy enough to ignore, and Gremlins have pretty good weaknesses, so I'm not too worried. But those critters, they're tough critters. What else can you say? Who owns the small soldiers' rights? I don't know. Oh, this is a good piece of news. This is wild. All right. Hold on to your butts. Hold on to your hat really tight, because I'm going to surprise you so much that your hat, your beanie, will just go, woo! Like just fly up to the ceiling when you hear about this one. So there's several different places that grade comics, right? Obviously, CGC is the best known, but there's several other pretty big ones, and one of those is CBCS. They posted on Twitter that they have launched an investigation into something. Folks, they lost 367, is it? Yeah, 367 valuable comics. There's a place called Clan McDonald Comics that basically submits your books for grading and offers various exclusives, stuff like that. They had given CBCS about these 367 books back in 2021. I think April of 2021, if I'm remembering correctly, okay? Now, CBCS says that you send the book to them, it's kept at their facility where it will be graded. They've got cameras, they've got like all sorts of security measures implemented, blah, blah, blah. Well, they broke that by, they sent these books to the house of one of their employees to be graded from home, apparently without any real tracking or anything like that, and they've lost it. They've admitted that they've lost it and that they're like searching for it. But yeah, they had to post on social media to sort of get out from behind and let people know where things stood. I have to say, I guess that's what you got insurance for, first of all, but if that's your whole business, is grading comics and stuff, I feel like losing them is just about the worst thing you can do with them. Ruining them, I guess, would be just as bad, but losing them that's tough. And it's been a while, so when they say that they're, launching an investigation, it's like, haven't you had an investigation going for a while now? I don't know. I don't know the full story, because there's the details are kind of scarce. There was just a post by the owner of Clan McDonald Comics talking about it, but he's pulled that post, I believe. I don't think you can find it anymore. And the short version is that, this grading company has lost track of the comics. I don't know exactly which comics, but I have to imagine they're fairly valuable. Losing them will most likely put a blemish on their reputation. Well, how could it not? I'm sure that there's a lot of great people that work there who this isn't their fault. But as a company, why would they? I guess it was just maybe because of the pandemic is why they decided to send stuff home to sort of speed things up to someone's home. But not a good idea. Not a good idea. I like to imagine a PI out there that looks like Dick Tracy who's looking for missing valuable comics. They had one job to do, yeah. CBCS was gaining ground on the market until this. I have to imagine that's a massive setback, because if anybody is sending their books out there to be graded, that'd make you nervous, right? I am not into the whole grading thing. I think I own a single graded comic, and I really just bought that as the pandemic was starting to support my local comic shop more than anything else. I was just like, they've got an old Ninja Turtles book. I'll get that, and because they weren't getting new issues at the time. That's the only reason I even have one. It's just not my thing. I know it's a big thing for a lot of collectors, and that's fine. A lot of comic book readers get into the grading and collecting aspect of it, and that's fine. That's a legit way to enjoy the hobby. It's not something I know a lot about because I haven't gotten into that. But so this company lost all those books. Yikes! Yikes! I have 2 graded books. Hulk 181 and Uncanny 94. Well, Allison, those are some pretty great books. And you know what? If I had Action Comics #1, maybe I would grade that just to protect it. Maybe I would, because I'm probably not going to be reading that comic. I can read a reprint or something. But I don't really have anything like that. Is your graded comic going to put your kids through college? Well, first of all, no kids. And second of all, probably not. Not with how much college is going up. In the news this week, they've been talking about, forgiving some of student debt. So I looked at, out of curiosity, what has college tuition been rising at versus the average median salary? How much has that been rising? And college is far outpacing how much people get paid. Proportionally, up through the 70s and 80s, it was still fairly affordable for just about anybody to find a way to send a kid to college. But these days, it's tough. So I don't think a comic book is going to put anybody's kid through college anymore. Just unlikely. Maybe they're with the missing library comics from last week. Somebody that works at the Stozier Library that claims he was the one that blew the whistle on the stolen comics did reach out to me asking if I wanted some more details. I didn't follow up because of how busy I was, but maybe I should. I got $20,000 off a semester in tuition through undergrad. Okay. My 2 copies of Turtles 1 aren't slabbed. They are signed and the signatures weren't witnessed back in '84. Well, there are, just to be clear, there are signature services by some of these grading companies. They'll compare the signature against known signatures, and they can authenticate that even without a certificate of authenticity. It costs a certain amount and can take a while, but they do offer that service, I believe. You have 2 copies of Ninja Turtles #1. I'll buy one off you. If you. I've always wanted to own one, even if I'm sure it's got to be 4th or 5th printing or something. But I'd still. Oh man, that's one that I've always wanted to own. I've got a couple grails. I think everybody has a couple grails, like a comic that they'd really love to own. And mine would definitely be, I would get more out of owning a first print of Ninja Turtles #1 than I would out of Action Comics #1. Your thoughts on whether to buy a gaming chair or no? I don't think they do that much. Both are first prints? Well, great. I can't afford that. That's amazing, Allison. Wow. You own 2 first prints of Ninja Turtles #1? That's... folks, if you haven't looked it up, look at what those sell for. It's up there. It's up there. Wow. You got them at the show in New Hampshire. Oh, I'm so jealous. This past summer, I did get to meet Kevin Eastman, and that was a treat. Got to tell him how much his work has meant to me, and got some new modern stuff signed by him. Wow. I'll be honest, that is incredible. That is incredible. I'll trade you a Walking Dead #1 for a Ninja Turtles #1. That's a deal, right? I have a TMNT 1/3 print that's well loved. Hey, that's incredible. That's incredible. I'm trying to remember when I got into Ninja Turtles. It was probably somewhere around somewhere between 16 and 20, I'm going to guess. It was just after Laird and Eastman stopped working on it regularly, but they would still do little bits of things. Yeah. Oh. Wow. That's really exciting. Fantastic Four Annual 3, The Wedding of Reed and Sue would be my grail. That's a cool one, Andrew Jefferson. Yeah, that's super cool. I have no idea what a grail would be for me. Maybe a Bone test print. Oh, sure. You know what I really want, and just because it's so hard to find, it's not that it's super valuable. It's a little expensive, but it's not super valuable. We're not talking thousands. I want the Jaws manga. Yes, when the Jaws movie came out, over in Japan, they made a manga adaptation of it. There are certain pages that have been scanned and uploaded, but not the whole thing. I would really love to own that book. It's not easy to find. I've signed up on several Japanese bookstores in Japan and like added it to a wish list that if they ever get it, like we're talking used bookstores, used comic stores, if they get that into inventory, I would get an alert. But I've had that for like over a year and I've never gotten an alert. If one wasn't my twins, I would trade it, but he passed and I combined our collections, so I won't part with any of them. I wouldn't expect you to, and Allison, I couldn't offer you what they're worth. I don't have that kind of money. So that's fine. Just a little jealous that you have it, but I'm happy for you. That's great. My uncle owns issue 1 of the Transformers Marvel comics. I used to. I think the earliest one I have now was like, I got issue 3 or 4, whichever the one with Spider-Man on the cover is. I got that one recently at a good price. So that was cool. Why the heck haven't they reprinted it or reprinted this in English? No idea. No idea. It's just not... I guess it's all about demand, actually. That's what it is. It's all about demand. I've got more news. I have a Bill Sienkiewicz signed Demon Bear New Mutants. Very cool. And many Dave Sims Sword of Service. Those are great, Joe. Congrats. I wish I had Invincible #1. I've got those. I've definitely got all that. Because I think Invincible #1 even has a pinup by me in the back, if I'm remembering right. It's either Invincible 1 or 2. I have a drawing of Invincible in there. Yeah. It's going back in time. Let's talk about the thing I've got in the thumbnail. This one hurts. This one, I don't know what DC was thinking here. So, September 15th to October 15th is Hispanic Heritage Pride Month, okay? And DC had a nice enough idea. They were going to do some themed covers that would refer to that. Some themed covers. Okay, cool. They've done that for, like, Asian American and Pacific Islanders. Like, that can be executed very well and respectfully, and that's a nice way to acknowledge all sorts of different fans. Totally get it. Yep, got it. They made some questionable decisions this year. First of all, like, the idea is, like, I guess they have all their Asian characters just sort of eating Hispanic. Sorry, I got tripped up because I'm drawing too. They've got them all eating Hispanic food, which it's not inherently bad. It's slightly reductive. But you know, whatever. That's not inherently like bad or problematic. It isn't. I don't think. Well, I guess it's not my place to say, but I don't think that that's the worst. But some of them don't make sense. First of all, okay, they've got characters that are Hispanic, like Blue Beetle, The Question, Renee Montoya, Bane. Yeah, fine. They're all Hispanic. Got it. Totally makes sense. Then they've got Hawk Girl. Hawk Girl, I don't think is Hispanic, unless I'm missing something. So I don't quite get that. Doing all right, Dark Taboki. Thank you. But then there was one, and let me actually show you some of these images. So actually back in June, first of all, artist Jorge Molina, who is Mexican, explained that, like, he had a cover that he was doing for this, which would involve Kyle Rayner, who has some Mexican heritage, so that makes sense. And Jorge was drawing it as sort of an homage to a famous mural painting called La Patria by, I want to get the artist's name right, by Jorge Gonzalez Camarena. Okay? I'll show it to you. So, I don't know how well this will show up, actually. But okay, so this is La Patria, okay? That looks cool. Holding a Mexican flag. Lots of, like, heritage related to Mexico there. Cool. And this is unfinished, just to be clear, what he posted in June. This was going to be his cover, Jorge's. Same sort of pose, same, like, background, but it's being powered by, like, Green Lantern's light, and he's still holding a flag. And he has, like, his signature here, and a little thing saying that it's an homage to La Patria. Perfect. Well, don't know exactly why, but due to some legalities, DC didn't want to go with, like, an exact homage. And so it wasn't going to get made. But then, without involving Jorge, they had somebody work on it, and this is the version they came up with. Dave E has a super chat related to this saying, as a Latino, I found all this very racist. You're allowed to. You're the one that would have an opinion more than me, but I did not love this. So, first of all, I don't love that they took the art out of the artist's hands. They've changed the flag. It's nowhere near as dynamic, and it says Viva Mexico, 2 exclamation points here. That's not good grammar. You'd have the sort of inverted exclamation point before this, if you're going to have an exclamation point. Supreme Omega saying, how come there hasn't been a third shared superhero universe that could compete with the big two? There was Milestone and Valiant, but they didn't last long. Oh, there's also been stuff like Image has tried a few times, and who else? Aside from Valiant, there was another one, Malibu, the Ultraverse. Just doesn't always work. Archie has had a superhero universe. Anyway, and so what's he holding here? A plastic bag with, and they literally wrote it on here as though we're too dumb to figure any of this out. It just says tamales. It's like, first of all, I love tamales. I don't know if I'd carry around a bag that says tamales. It's just worse in every way. And you'll note, there is no artist's signature anymore. There's no artist's signature anymore. And Jorge said this week on Twitter, he was like, hard to keep my mouth shut about this. You'll just note that one of them has my signature and one does not. Why does he have a shopping bag? Yeah, it's a shopping bag full of tamales because, of course, that's what Hispanics do, is they eat Hispanic food all the time, apparently. They love it. They can't get enough of just, you never catch them, having a cheeseburger or, cooking ramen. No, that's crazy. Yeah, so going from this, which is a really interesting homage, and I don't understand why there would be legalities there. And you can tell that it's unfinished, by the way, because look, there's no Green Lantern symbol on his chest there, okay? So you can tell that this was unfinished. This was a proof of concept. I think the flag looks like it was still getting detailed, like up here and stuff like that, but it's an interesting idea, right? Homaging a famous painting. I thought that would be covered under fair use and parody and stuff like that. I really did. Tamales are usually homemade. They're delicious, by the way. I've worked several jobs where, to make extra money, somebody's mom or aunt has offered to make tamales, and you just, and they're always good. They're always damn good. Boy, that's just a downgrade on every level, in my opinion. The flag, the lettering on the flag, and holding a bag of food that's so hard to tell what it is that they literally had to write it on the screen, like that it says tamales. Like, if you covered that up, I have to admit, I guess I wouldn't necessarily know that those are tamales. Yes, they look like they're wrapped in corn husks, but it's just too small. It's not going over well. Like, nobody is impressed with this. And I bet you anything that does not get published. I bet you anything right now that DC is going to hear this, feedback, and that ain't happening. This pose is so much stiffer. This flag is flatter. I totally agree, Caveman. Absolutely a downgrade. Cuban tamales are better. I have not had them to compare. I've only had them made by people whose family is from Mexico, but I have had them at several different jobs, just to be clear, offered, and I always jump on it because I know that it's going to be a treat. And I've gotten them at the store sometimes, yummy, but not as good as homemade stuff. That is for sure. And I'm not just saying that. It is absolutely the truth. So anyway, I think DC really put their foot in their mouths with this one. I don't think it's a great look. I don't think it's giving the respect that they obviously intend. You know, like they've got good intentions here, and they just totally botched the execution. Or maybe a couple of them are okay, but again, I don't understand the Hawk Girl one. Because Hawk Girl, I'm positive Hawk Girl is not supposed to be Hispanic. Kyle Rayner does have some Hispanic heritage, but I don't know. Everybody wants tamales now, right? Oh man, that would be so nice. I need some legit tamales. They're so good. He has the right to have the wrong opinion, but Mexican tamales are the Michael Jordan of tamales, not up for debate. Let's not fight over how delicious tamales are, because I'm sure we'd both like Cuban and Mexican tamales. I think we'd both like them a lot. My family makes traditional Mexican tamales, but what makes a Cuban tamale? Yeah, you're right. That makes me curious too, just because there's not many ingredients to a tamale, right? Unless you're adding a certain spice or something extra. Comic Tamales, that's the new show. It's like, it's starting with like good intentions, and I believe they got a bunch of, Hispanic artists to illustrate this stuff. Again, good. Using some of their Hispanic characters, good. But the idea of they're all eating food, it just feels, if you did it with one, you're like, sure, that's a part of culture. But there's so many different aspects of the culture. It's like, why are you going to reduce it down to one thing across every cover? That just doesn't seem smart. Honduran Noctamales enters the ring. Oh, that sounds interesting. Tamale Tropes. It's not Hispanic, but spaghetti is a food I feel you can never go wrong with. Well, yeah. Unless, unfortunately, you're somebody that's like diabetic like me, and then I'm trying to avoid things that are like starchy and carby, like all sorts of noodles and breads. It's tough. If you live near me, I'd give you a ton of tamales every holiday season. We have them every year homemade. Oh my God, I would love that. And now I'm like thinking about, I wonder, I'm trying to think of like, people that I know like that would potentially make them. I guess I've got a few people that might. It feels insulting because of how stereotypical it is. And I think it only becomes stereotypical because the same idea was used so many times across like 5 or 6 covers. You've got like Blue Beetle is running across a rooftop, again, with like a bunch of like chimichangas or something like that. I can't tell exactly what they are. There's the one actually with like Renee Montoya, who's the Question. It's sort of like a bunch of different, it's almost like a cornucopia of like peppers and corn and stuff that's grown down there a little bit more than here. Could I eat wheat spaghetti? Sure. Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. Okay, bye, Allison. Thanks for sharing with us that you own 2 copies of Ninja Turtles #1 first print. That's very exciting. Thank you for stopping by. There's a guy famous in Chicago for going bar to bar and selling tamales from a cooler. I'd buy one. I would. That's the kind of stuff I'd take a chance on. I do. Because I've had good experiences. So until I don't, I will keep taking chances on that stuff. And it's a chance because I don't know the person. But, boy, are they good when they're done right. I'll move on to some more news. I was just curious what kind of opinions people would have. Solstice Art with a generous super chat saying, sending some comics I made out to you, Tom. Chris, sending some comics I made out to you, Tom. Maybe you mean 2 instead of Tom. Now I want a tamale. Everybody wants tamales tonight, right? Half Venezuelan, half Barbacoa and Dominican, but I love pastas. Oh, sure. Pastas are awesome. Just because I can't have it doesn't mean I don't like it. Trust me. I would love to have, like, some gnocchi. Gnocchi is one of my favorites. Miss it. But yeah, maybe I should get some, like, wheat spaghetti or something, just so that and then I gotta think of, like, what to have in it, because, you know, I couldn't really do, like, a traditional spaghetti sauce either, because there's a lot of sugar in, you know, like, a normal tomato-based sauce. Too much for my body. It wouldn't be healthy. I try to take care of myself. Gotta be here to make more episodes for you. By the way, the next episode of Comic Tropes, if it all goes according to plan and I can get it done properly, I think will be one of the funnier ones I've ever made. I hope it all comes together right. I think it should. I'm excited about it, and I love getting excited about making a new episode. Thanks for understanding that, like, you know, the Romita Jr. one took me a little longer than usual. A lot of history and gathering of images for that one. It just took a little longer. Rao's spaghetti sauce is very low in sugar. I ate it when I was on keto. Oh, perfect. That would be something that would work for me. And you're right, TJ Rip, pesto is a good way to go too. Did you read Tales of the Human Target? Yes, I did. I talked about that earlier, Froggy. Give it a strong recommendation to everybody out there, even if you haven't read any of the other stuff. Tales of the Human Target, great standalone book. Amazing. Not exactly a twist, but amazing how it all comes together at the very end. I don't want to give it away, but it's amazing. It's simply the best. There's more news. Why did I slow down on the news? We're like coming up on 2 hours and I've still got news to talk about. You know what? I found this interesting. Boom Studios seems to be doing very well these days. Obviously, like, they've got a humongous hit with stuff like House of Slaughter, Something is Killing the Children. That's, like, big. But they've got something else here that's been huge that, like, totally went under the radar for me until I saw that there was, like, they were doing a 4th reprint of it. Have you guys heard, probably some of you must have, about Grimm? Because Grimm #1 is going back for its 4th printing and has sold about 100,000 copies now. That's really big for, like, you know, an indie book. 100,000 copies. Just to be clear, like, 8 Billion Genies #1 is up to more like 70,000. But yeah, Grimm. It's a story of this girl, Jessica Harrow. She dies, and she's basically given a job being a reaper for the underworld. But I just thought that, like, just the numbers there were really interesting. Because, you know, typically 100,000 is more what something like, you know, Batman with a top-notch creative team does. And I feel like that this is an indication that, like, these days, certain indie books are really catching lots of people's attention. And it's just a good time for horror as well, or horror-based stories. One of the strongest periods I've seen since, like, you know, the 50s. It's amazing how much interest there is in horror these days. I love it, because that's one of my favorite genres. So I was excited. I haven't read Grimm yet. I hadn't seen or heard about it. I only heard about it when I was looking at news stuff. I was like, oh my god, these numbers are incredible. Like, why hadn't I come across this yet? So I hope to give that a shot in the near future. Is anybody out there reading it? 8 Billion Genies shipments have been delayed at my local comic store. Have you or anyone else been concerned about it? I've been getting my copies, so I didn't know about that. I like the book quite a bit. Let's see. It's pretty derivative of some manga like Soul Eater, even Bleach, but it was a great time. It may be, but it's new to some people, and hopefully, you know, it's original enough. But yeah. Interesting POV on that one. Thank you. What's my favorite horror book to read? It's usually whatever I've read most recently, because after a while, it doesn't sort of scare me the same way. So the most recent thing I came across that I felt was really disturbing was The Nice House on the Lake, written by James Tynion. I thought that that was definitely a creepy, creepy story, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. But I liked Walking Dead. I love a lot of the old EC horror. I love Junji Ito. There's lots of great stuff out there for sure. Pentagram of Horror is a really good looking book. It's got all the Grimm... I've got all the Grimm issues. Okay. I think a lot of people are speculating on Grimm. They're looking for the next Something is Killing the Children. That may be, but 100,000 is still pretty damn high, even accounting for that. Ice Cream Man, that's a good one. You know, I haven't read that lately, but you're right. Ice Cream Man is good. That's a creepy, disturbing one. That's a good call. Is anybody else watching House of the Dragon on HBO? That's what I'm drawing, so I was just curious. I like Game of Thrones a lot. Mostly the books. I did like most of the TV show. It's a good show. House of Dragon, I don't like quite as much. I'll be honest. I think the biggest issue for me is there's not an everyman sort of character or somebody that's likable to sort of like root for, like there definitely was in Game of Thrones. Also, the stakes in Game of Thrones were much higher because that show starts with like people squabbling over politics, but the real issue that nobody's really paying attention to is that there are these sort of zombie walkers that are about to invade at some point. And everybody's distracted by arguing about politics. But House of the Dragon is really just about squabbling over politics, and we sort of know that eventually it'll lead to this one family sort of falling apart. And it's like, well, okay. The Silver Coin is really fun. I've heard that Void Coupon that it's really good. The Red Mother is good? Okay. Anyway, oh, this is cool. Webtoon. I've been reading more Webtoon stuff lately. I'm reading Bastard and Lore Olympus. Those are the two that I'm mainly reading. But they're growing, obviously. They're big. And they announced that they're going to have a pretty big licensed comic coming up next year. A Dungeons and Dragons comic. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons on Webtoon. The writer is somebody named Purpa. Sorry, don't know them yet. And artist is somebody named Ryan LeCount. But anyway, it's going to follow a dark elf named Bree, and she's the daughter of Drizzt, what's his last name? Do'Urden. Pretty famous character created by R.A. Salvatore. And she's going to take his sword and go out and like have her own adventures. So yeah, Webtoon is going to have a Dungeons and Dragons themed comic coming out pretty soon, which I thought sounded pretty interesting and different. The DC Webtoons are really good. Cool. Hi, Daniel. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Shuzo Oshimi's Blood on the Tracks is a great slow burn psychological horror manga. Ooh, I do tend to like those, so thanks for the heads up. Shuzo Oshimi. Drizzt Do'Urden. Yeah, I'm probably mispronouncing it. I'm not a huge expert on that stuff, but yeah. And I guess R.A. Salvatore himself, who created that character, is involved, like staying involved, like, you know, sort of like helping guide the story and make sure that, like, you know, the stuff he created about dark elves is accurate. So, yeah, I feel like that will do well. And I think I'm starting to get why Lore Olympus is popular. You know, it's got some really, great looking original art, and the characters feel very believable. It's an interesting new way of looking at the old Greek mythology, so I get it. I'm pretty early on, but it is cool. It is cool. Matt Smith is killing it on that show. Yeah, Matt Smith is like definitely impressive on it, but of course he's not somebody I'm rooting for. He's pretty horrible. I mean, maybe they'll put him on some sort of a redemption arc at some point. I don't know, but right now it's a very different character than the Doctor. It's very different. Webtoon has got me interested with that one. Him and Elminster were my introduction to D&D. Oh, wow, that's great. Going out for ice cream. Love you, Chris and Comic Troopers. Stay safe and see y'all next Monday. Have some good ice. What kind of ice cream? What kind of ice cream? What's your favorite? Tell us. Tell us your favorite ice cream. Max Bauer. Having replayed Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, I started looking into the many spin-off manga from the original franchise. A lot. I didn't know that it had that many spin-offs. Then I learned H&K is the 17th top-grossing franchise in the world. Isn't that wild? Yeah, it is. Really? Huh. 17th top-grossing franchise, or like 17th top-grossing manga? Like, huh. Give me some more context on that one. That is interesting. Ever hear anything good on Archiven Comics with another Webtoon style site? No, I don't know about that one, I have to admit. That would be new to me. I'm trying not to rush on this illustration and just sort of generally move left to right, but obviously I'm not going to be able to finish this on this episode, so that kind of stinks, but there's just too much detail needed for like some of the plating and the armor and stuff like that. If it's not cookies and cream, don't speak. Okay? Soft serve vanilla with sprinkles in a waffle cone. Next to that is mint chocolate chip. I love vanilla. I do. Archiven is led by Chuck Dixon. I liked a bunch of Chuck Dixon stuff in the 90s and stuff. He seems to have gotten like really political in the last several years. So I don't love that, but who knows? He wrote some good Punisher and Robin, that's for sure. The list was based on media franchises. Hokuto no Ken has grossed over $21.8 billion. Really? Really? So stuff like, I guess, Star Wars and Harry Potter would be up there. Probably Marvel's stuff. But, wow. Konami owns the rights to making Hokuto no Ken games, I think. And they have made so many pachinko machines. Oh, so like we're sort of getting into the gambling sphere with that. That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, pachinko is definitely popular in Japan. But still, $21.8 billion. Like, that does surprise me a lot. I gotta look that up. That's really interesting. Steve Sorensen with a super chat saying, oh, here is something that will warm your cold, dead New England heart, Chris. He didn't say cold, dead. Newberry Comics is opening a new location in Albany, New York. I may make a trip soon. Newberry Comics was always fun, although the emphasis is definitely mostly on music as compared to comics. But I always had fun dropping into a Newberry Comics store. Especially on Newberry Street. That's great. Yeah, I hope it's a good store when they set it up. I hope you can have some fun there. Number one is Pokemon. The number one franchise is Pokemon? I find it hard to believe Pokemon has made more money than something like Star Wars or Harry Potter. worldwide. Maybe they're talking about Japan specifically? Because that could make sense, maybe. I gotta see that article, because that just doesn't quite... I can't square that circle. That's interesting. At one point, the top 3 franchises were Star Wars, Disney Princesses, and Winnie the Pooh, all owned by Disney. Don't know if it's changed. Well, I'm sure Winnie the Pooh can't quite be up that high now. I'm sure he, still makes money, but I just can't imagine him being, like, way high up there. Not with, like, how much, like, something like Avengers, Endgame makes. Pokemon has grossed over $92 billion. Wow. I guess Pokemon is older than I'm thinking. I mean, I guess it has been around since the late 90s, huh? Yeah. Yeah, maybe. That is a lot of games. And movies and cartoons and merchandise, toys. Yeah, they probably... Comics. Huh. Well, I definitely have something that I want to look up and read up on, because that's just not what I would have expected. But, that's why common sense isn't always the most accurate way to think about these things. Kids love Pokemon. Women be shopping. I'm curious to see Chris's opinion on some manhwas. I haven't read a lot of Korean or Chinese comics, if you're talking about manhwa. Some. For Korean, pretty much just stuff on, like, Webtoon. A couple different things on Webtoon. And for Chinese... well, I made an episode when I was in Hong Kong on Tony, oh geez, I'm forgetting his last name all of a sudden. Came out in mid-90s? Well, yeah, right around there. According to Wikipedia, top 5 are Pokemon, Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse and Friends, Winnie the Pooh, and Star Wars, all over $50 billion. Pokemon manga is actually pretty decent, says Steve Sorensen. Haven't read it. That's cool. Does manga hold the same value as far as first appearances of characters goes? Probably not as much. Because I have been to a bunch of different comic book stores in Japan, and it's expensive, but it's not that hard to find, like, old, what do you call them? Not the tankobon, but the actual anthology, the weekly... like shonens and stuff like that, and shoujo magazines. So they seem to be in decent enough supply, because I think they print so many. It's considered disposable entertainment, but, like, they print so many that it's not that hard to find some in good condition. Yeah, something like the first appearance of Astro Boy might be on the harder side because of how old it is as well. Like, there's going to be less, but yeah. Can't believe everyone ignored my Eternal Warrior comment to talk about stuff they've heard of. Sorry, Dave. Sounds like we're pretty rude. That's me. Yeah, I'm a bad guy. I gotta wrap this up pretty soon. Let's see. Here's a little one. I've got 2 little things left for news. One is that apparently really soon there will be an Archies musical, but here's the trick. There's a catch. It's going to be on Netflix India. Yeah, it's being made in India. India has licensed the rights to Archie comics, and they're making a musical movie about it with all Indian cast members envisioned as the Archie characters. I saw some photos and a little trailer, and it looked kind of fun. Didn't look bad. I thought that was interesting, though, seeing Archie through the lens of Indian culture. That's definitely different, isn't it? So that's something you can look up if you're curious. And then I wanted to give a plug to something a friend of mine did. This is an old childhood friend. He's been going through all sorts of, like, tough personal experiences. Oh, thanks, Gus Mock. That's really nice of you to give a super chat. Thank you. Archie Bollywood. Sort of, yeah. If you go to Amazon, my friend has written a book. You can look it up under W.P. Quigley. It's called Chaos Heaven. Here, I'll just pull it up so that you can see an image. And it's a collection of short stories and poems. They're all sort of dark horror themes, transgressive stuff. But what kind of a friend would I be if I didn't, support friends? So I wanted to just pull that up real quick and just sort of give a shout out to it. Having trouble pulling it up on my app version. That's so weird. It pulls up really fast. Oh, it's looking under a certain category. I hope. Boy, this is weird. I'm looking for books, you weirdos, not food. Books, thank you. There. Okay. So, yeah. He took time out of like a very busy life to write Chaos Heaven. Again, the author's name, W.P. Quigley. I can't zoom in on that, but he puts it under his initials, W.P. Quigley. So I wanted to just put it out there because, I'm sure if he can sell a couple, that would like make him, feel a sense of accomplishment. I'm very impressed and proud of him for seeing that through. I know it is not easy to finish a book, a comic, any sort of a personal project. So I'm impressed, and I wanted to take a moment. He's a friend, not just like somebody that's like paying me or something. So I wanted to give a shout out to that. Did you get a new camera? I did. This camera is new, just to be clear. Yeah, that one's new. Are they related to Quigley Down Under? You'll just have to read to find out. Who doesn't like Archie? It's so universal. That's a healthy, happy, positive attitude to have. Yeah, who doesn't like Archie? Archie's cool. My sister used to get some Archie comics, and I think that they can be pretty fun. I like the modern stuff. I really like the Mark Waid, Fiona Staples run. I did an episode about that. Ate a ton of cheeseburgers for it. I think that's a pretty fun episode. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Oh, I know what to tell you. I'm doing something pretty cool this weekend. And I'm getting my Stan Lee on. I'm going to basically do a cameo in a type of movie. Now, it is a fan film, not like a real, high, big budget movie, but there are some people that are making Spider-Man 4, like as though it's set in the Sam Raimi universe, okay? And I feel like what they're doing looks really fantastic. And this weekend, I'm shooting something. I've got like a role in it, as there's like the Daily Bugle staff, and that's cool. I think that these guys are putting together something really cool. They've got some nice sets. They've got some good money and some interesting special effects. They've got a great Spider-Man suit and some really talented actors and stuff. I've never worked on something quite like this before. I've done some small, indie type movies here and there a little bit, but when the fact that they were local and it's comic book related, it feels like it's a good fit. Because it's a fan film, don't expect this to be something that comes out in the next 5 or 6 months. This is the kind of thing that can take sometimes years to make. But it's something I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to do a little bit of acting. I don't want to give away too much, but it's not a huge role. It's only 2 pages of script that we're shooting. But what I get to do is definitely super cool. There's not like a way that it's not just me being like, Stan Lee and going like, oh, I'm reading a book, thanks for walking by, Spider-Man. It's not that. Like, it's an actual like role that's integral to moving the story forward. So while it's sort of a cameo, it's also still like sort of a role, and I think it's going to be a blast. I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to give it my best. I think I can do something good. I've been putting a lot of thought into how to make the character believable and plausible, something that I can do, and I can't wait. I think it'll be fun, and I can't wait to share it with you guys someday. Like, I think that'll be really cool someday. No spoilers. No. I'm going to be the guy selling the Sleepy Time soda. Exactly. Andrew Jefferson, with a deep cut to one of my Comic Tropes episodes. Exactly right. But anyway, with that, I think that should probably do it for this episode of The Weekly Spinner Rack. If this show grows, or like if Comic Tropes really grows or something, just so you know, I've got plans on ways that I could do this show, but bigger. I would love to at some point have a studio and like have somebody that's sort of working as a producer that could like throw up images of the stuff that I'm talking about with you guys, so that I could more react to it instead of just talk about it. Like maybe sit at an actual desk and sort of play host. And if we did something like that, then I could potentially even have guests on for like sort of quick interviews and stuff. I think that would be a really fun weekly comic book themed show to like make it bigger. But obviously that my ideas cost money, so it has to grow. It's going to take a while, but this show does seem to be growing, and I like that, because I'll be honest, I have a lot of fun making this one. It's very different than what I do on Comic Tropes, like with fully edited episodes and like analysis and sort of writing essays and stuff. I can't talk about it really. So I hate when people are vague, but I really can't exactly explain what this is. But I've been offered an opportunity to write a book for a publisher named Redacted, and we'll see if that happens and all. But it would specifically be sort of a Comic Tropes book. I think it could potentially be very, very interesting. Something that people could really enjoy, like a cool coffee table book about comic book history and stuff like that. So we'll see. But a publisher did reach out to me this week, and that was really flattering that I'm even at the point where that's potentially an option. And it might work. We'll see. I'm gonna try to make it work, but I know you guys are super supportive, and I'd love to make it happen. We'll see if it makes sense. We'll see. But yeah. So all sorts of cool news. That's probably plenty about me. You come here more to talk about the comics and stuff, not my life. But I'm super busy getting these shows done, and I'm doing my best to try to sort of carve out just a little bit of time to make some creative content as well as educational content. But we'll see. But I'm trying. Thanks, Jeannie. I appreciate the support. You're always great. Let's see. Yes, like and subscribe. Yeah, it does. If you haven't yet, I'd love it if you could hit subscribe here. Also on Comic Tropes. That helps me out a lot. A lot of people, most people actually, that watch this show are actually not subscribed. I can see the analytics on everything. And that's kind of amazing, because I do have a good amount of subscribers these days, but most people that watch my shows, not subscribed. Anyway, so if you were so kind, I would be flattered. Anyway, I think that'll do it for this show. I think that this is a good time to get wrapped up. Thanks, Andrew Jefferson. Pear giving you the thumbs up, too. And you know what? You guys have earned it tonight. You get the double salute. Not everybody gets that, but yeah, I'm happy to give you guys the double salute, which is, not to brag, something I invented, and I think it's really going to take off. and just become the way for people to greet each other. The high five, the fist bump, it had its day. The double salute is what's coming. Thanks, everybody. I had a great time. Thank you so much for contributing with your questions and your comments and the super chats. It really means a lot. How do you not subscribe? I assume that is a given. Lots of people don't, and that's okay, but it's lovely if you can. I'm going to take off. Thank you all. I'll see you next week, and get your hopes up for a funny comic tropes, okay? I'll leave it at that. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Keep reading comics.